Yeah.
All right, guys, we are live. Edition for story. This is take 2 with Brian Muka, who just shared 14 minutes of an incredible experience on how he shows up in service to the world, and yet it was like wah, wah, wah. So we're trying this again in honor of all you beautiful people who I know can benefit from experiencing Brian. So Brian, thanks for being here.
Honored. Thanks for triggering me the first time we ever met.
Why, whatever do you mean?
Man, it was great. It was like the first public experience I had in sharing experience. That was different than your experience, and we talked about it. And yeah, it we came together numerous times. I just really appreciate the way you challenged me, and it's nice to be appreciated, having a different perspective. And
Yeah,
we've made a wonderful friendship as a result of not agreeing on a lot of things.
you know, it's so
Awesome.
awesome. And I think that you and I are a testament to the power of being able to bear witness to another person and their knowing and not necessarily aligning with that understanding, but still having a mutual respect and admiration, which is critically needed
Yeah.
in this world today.
Agreed. Agreed. And actually, I'm noticing in the market, in the world, we get to come back together, like masculine, feminine, Democrats, Republicans. We just had an election here, rich, poor, Catholics, and Christians and Muslims. Like, we have the opportunity to remember everyone's experience. Let me not say that because that's an opinion. I notice that when I share my experience, it creates coherence. When I project opinions, it creates division, which is, the first act of violence. I notice.
Ooh, that's so good. And you're right, it is. And I would even go so far as to say when we project our own storytelling into the world, we create violence because it's simply a story. It's not even reality. And I think that's how you and I came together is I had one perspective of a story and you had a different, wasn't right or wrong, good or bad. It just was. Yeah. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience, please.
Hi, guys. Brian Muka at your service. I seem to be a bit of a Sherpa. I'm not an actual Sherpa. I just have so much reverence for the tribe that thrives on the top of the world, community that lives and helps people climb the tallest peaks on Earth. And so that was the motivation. How can we come together as a community and do dangerous things, face fears? That's been my obsession since 2011 when my Navy Special Operations career came to an early end. I let unworthiness and self-doubt steal my boyhood dream. I didn't know that was the start of my shaman training, warrior shaman specifically. That's the work I do spiritually. And lately, I've been applying that to entrepreneurship because there is not a single entrepreneur that I've worked with that has a lack of ability. Not one. It's courage. And so I've been blessed to have chased these muses of breath and energy and imagination, and now the subconscious reprogramming. Rapid change. That doesn't take years like therapy. So that's what I'm on to.
It's so funny, I have a tattoo that says live with courage, lead with love. And I really honestly believe that to love unconditionally requires an immense amount of courage because it bucks up against fundamental understandings of what love is for most people.
100%. And so in that, quoting the gene keys, so human design, similar to that, if you're not familiar, the very center of my spiritual IQ, the highest expression of that is valor. There's a movie called Act of Valor. As a former bomb technician, special operations guy. Like valor is a cool word.
I love the word.
I didn't know what it meant.
Mm.
And so it's pretty simple for me now. Valor just means showing up with courage and an open heart at the same time.
Yep. And
Yep.
when you do that, you risk being rejected because it shakes the foundation of what most people believe is courage and or love.
I'm not sure where in the Bible this is written. It's probably multiple times, but love conquers all.
Well, you and I both study quantum physics too, which is another reason we're aligned. And I mean, science proves the existence that God, however you define God for you, because I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, I think much like you. Love is the most powerful energy outside of, interestingly enough, authenticity. Because I believe, and I would be curious to hear your point on this, we are unique expressions of love. And when we allow ourselves to show up as our unique expression of love in conjunction of oneness, but as ourselves, we are the most powerful.
Maybe. I don't have enough experience to share that, and I answer for the weak. I can speak for me. And this imagination experience going, a million light years to interact with these emerald energetic beings. I learned a lot in that, the interconnectedness of all things. And what I want to share, my experience in this, here's what I actually experienced on a cosmic universal level. My friend Nick and I were visited by these emerald entities. They showed me how to bend time, and also the antidote to radiation poisoning, which our friend Gail got to use with her and aid her journey back from chemo and radiation treatments. And we're there, and all of a sudden we're like in the middle of the Akashic records, like a really holy place. I've been there before. The other times, like, shh, not supposed to be here. And then we're in the middle of this, like it was like a ceremony. And I looked at my guide and I'm like, why are we in the middle? Like, why are we dressed so nice? And my guide just whispered, "You're being honored." For what? For love. I don't understand. Like, don't you know that human love is the most valuable commodity in the entire Milky Way galaxy? No, I didn't know that. Why? Why does my love matter? Because human love is a choice after such pain. You have to choose love.
Yep.
So that's all I know about love. It seems to be that the strong forces between the nucleus, between the electrons and everything it's love. The whole universe is connected through the attractive force of love. Call it whatever you want, but I think that's love, and it knows no bounds. Quantum entanglement was the Nobel Prize in 2022. So if I impart something with love here, it doesn't know time or distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're spot on. I love that. Okay, so going back to, we're going to kind of revisit your story a little bit because our beautiful audience didn't to capture it earlier. So I guess I'll ask the question the same way, and hopefully you come up with a similar response, or at least one that is as insightful. And that's, what establishes you as somebody who can show up in service to humans as love to help them get to love?
I decided to investigate my wound. This deep, deep, sort of like human abandonment wound. And I didn't know I had that. 2006, I raised my right hand. I swear to defend and support the Constitution of the United States of America as a special operations officer bomb technician, future platoon commander. And the first half of that journey was incredible. I got paid to jump out of airplanes, went to the coolest shooting schools, Secret Service missions. I was there for the inauguration for Obama, like,
That's
credentialed up.
cool.
Right. I spent 6 days in Spain. I had 12 hours of work for Joe Biden, actually, when he was VP. So it was a crazy time. And I have a story about the Lincoln Memorial or Lincoln Jazz Center. No, that's a Kennedy Center. Sorry, different story. We'll tell that another time when I got to direct the presidential motorcade. That was kind of a cool one. Fast forward, first combat deployment. My chief, my senior enlisted advisor, his dad was dying of cancer, and I sent him home because I couldn't bear the thought of what would happen if Aaron was doing bomb surgery on improvised explosive devices, worried about his dad. That would have been a failure of leadership on my part. So I sent him home. And I jumped on my sword. And I would be severely punished for that decision because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. First deployment. I was the first year group of officers that didn't go to a ship first to learn officership. So obviously that was my fault. And I was fired. Became night watch captain, and I spent 4.5 months on the other side of the world feeling like I had leprosy. Solitary confinement sounds close. I lived in a.
I imagine at the time you felt like it was your fault, like you failed.
Oh, yeah, I would. Yep, Roger that, sir. I'll fix it. And I couldn't. I didn't understand. That I made the right decision and I would be severely punished. Well, for years, actually. And so Saturdays were sort of a down day. And my buddy challenged me to a marathon in New Jersey when I got home. So, I decided to train for a marathon because I was better than what I was doing. And I remember one Saturday, I was like 10 miles into a run. I had my sneakers over the edge of the hardball, over the desert sand. I just started staring out in the desert. And I just heard that voice whisper, you don't have to go back, right? Just run into the desert until I couldn't. I didn't take any steps. I stood there for 20 minutes, and I'm seeing in this moment how Yeshua was tempted in the desert. Like I was like 300 miles away from where that story happened. And that was my temptation to, maybe end my life early. And I stared and stared and stared in that chasm. And eventually I heard God's voice whisper, I got a bigger mission for you. Go home. I turned around, and all of a sudden there's a whole pallet of water, like out of nowhere. I drank a liter of water and I ran home, and nobody ever knew about that story for a really, really long time. I didn't unpack this until today, that there was something much bigger happening in the military, and I took ownership of it. I was at fault, and that was my driver for learning to go through therapy, to write a book, to learn breath work, these energetic practices. Like I built this shit because I needed it.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, it seems to be useful for other people too. Why am I qualified for this? So my gene keys, at the very center of my spiritual IQ is valor. I came to Earth to be a shaman warrior, and I've done that.
Yeah. Something I love that I want the listening audience to hear, I think, and I shared this before, and I truly believe it. In a world where I believe, and this is my perspective, we have humans who are conditioned into habits, behaviors, and patterns that keep them in suffering. How can we show up in service to the world until we've experienced and come through the other side of our own suffering? And that, to your point, requires an immense amount of courage. But think about it. You were conditioned by the military to perform and to challenge that because your intuition, your heart, whatever, felt differently it takes an immense amount of resilience and resolve to do so. And in doing so, you're able to then hold space for other people, however you do that, as they step into their own courage. Because at the end of the day, we do different work, but we work with in similar spaces. And I think that the people we work with, they're being forced to step into that courage to the other side, to love.
That's it. Courage and love go together. That's what valor's made out of. I found. It's the journey straight to the center of the heart. And it's been the scariest thing I've ever done, is to learn how to surrender, to know that I don't have any of the answers. Like, I don't know how to answer your question in that. It's the gutsiest thing I've ever done, is learn how to love myself. To admit I am perfect. I don't mean perfectly imperfect. I mean perfect already. And that the amount of time that I spent pondering, someday I will be healed. Someday I'll be whole. Someday I'll be better. It's a really elusive process. Like, there's no treasure at the end of that rainbow, because there's no.
So how? So, okay, you come out of the military, you go see a therapist, how did you stumble upon that, knowing that your perfection?
That's quite a story. That's what my next book's about. And the title, I think, will be something like Unworthiness. God didn't make me that way. And it's about that very journey. So it started with not just any therapist. Like, this woman gave a shit about us. And she was the explosive ordnance disposal group 2 mental health counselor. That was my first therapist. Professional ballet dancer, beautiful soul, like operating in a man's world, and just treated like shit. Like, she was saving lives and putting men back together after these terrible, terrible, terrible things that the military was asking us to do. This is the side of the military that people don't like talking about, especially in these communities. Like, it's like sharks and blood in the water stuff, So we started working together, and she had me read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And
love that book.
things in that book. The one I'll share is there's a space between stimulus and response, and is in this space we have our freedom to choose, to grow. And I read that like Victor said that to me, and I was like, man, I need to get over my fucking victim story, that I didn't go through the Holocaust. Like, I have every advantage right now. 114110, I think, is Viktor Frankl's prison number. And I wanted to etch that on my watches to remind myself, like, you are not in the Holocaust. It was awful. Like, I realize now it was a mistake to make that comparison.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was absolutely going to say something. Go ahead. Share that.
But I got to walk with Viktor Frankl, and also the Rumi quote, "Don't look away from the bandaged place, for it is here that the light first enter."
Yep.
And so that was the spark. That was the seed. That was the crack in the sidewalk. And so I started writing these like 3, 5, 7-page emails to Talia about what I was going through. And like on the third or fourth one, I'm reading to her, and she's like, "Where are you getting this stuff from?" "I don't know. This is how I'm metabolizing this suffering that I'm going through." And she's like, "I've been in therapy for 30 years. I've never seen this before. Keep going, kid. You got something." And in that moment, boom, Fear Sherpa was born. I had permission to continue. Somebody saw the goodness in this journey.
Oh my God. Let's just mic drop right there. And I'll tell you why. Because you just hit something most people don't recognize. I'm actually teaching this very point tomorrow. Permission. I think part of the gift that you and I give to people, Brian, is that we give people permission until they can give themselves permission. And
yes,
what you and I both did on our journeys is eventually we said, I'm going to give myself permission to show up. and however that looks like. And that to me is the light coming through the bandage, because once you have permission, you're unstoppable.
Unstoppable. I found in that journey though, there's some vestigial things like leftover structures of like the 0 to 7, 0 to 21 type conditioning stuff.
For
And
sure.
I thought for a long time I could outbreathe that. I could change my energetic state and rise above it. And nope, those things show up when they show up. And learned how to like not make a story out of it. How do I like fully experience that grief? Like the death of my boyhood dream, jumping out of airplanes, Mission Impossible, without the murder, right? I have to do that. But like it was the death of a dream, and that comes up. Kind of like my divorce, with my practice wife. It comes out every once in a while. But it wasn't until I started seeing what are the programs that are running in my subconscious mind, like unworthiness. I learned that from my dad. He didn't say that though. Like I learned it from watching him.
Yep.
And then so like, who am I to lead this movement? Like I made this thing up. And then, those moments and that's really loud for me. Like I'm not over that.
I love you so much. And I think, you and I are a lot alike in that I think that, well, I personally feel, I can only speak for me, but I believe it's my responsibility to show the messy middle, because often people look at you and I and they're like, oh, they got it all figured out. The hell we do. We're continuing to get triggered based on an experience we're in the moment. But the difference between you and I and most other people is we're willing to examine it in that moment and transmute that suffering, that to explore the belief and to release that belief, and then give ourselves another belief that will fundamentally allow us to step into the perfection that we always have been, but have limited ourselves from knowing because of the conditions that we placed on ourselves based on the experiences we had in utero to 7 and then 7 to 21.
Yes. I'm going to mention two things. So first, this is perfect. What I'm going through, I am perfect, and what I'm going through is perfect. Perfection. Not perfecting. I spent a lot of time trying to perfect myself, and it's not possible. So yesterday I was doing some work with a client of mine. I incorporated this quantum subconscious reprogram. And I finished that, and he's like, man, we've worked together 6 times, like these 6 deep spiritual quantum surgeries. And then we get to the bottom, and I'm like, that's the end. And then you come out with something new. Like there's going to be another level. Like you're going to invent it, and we'll have more work to do. And I said to him, I'm like, it was perfect. In that moment, that was perfect. And the other thing I just want to mention too is like in noticing the perfection of this moment, like I can feel the suffering and also the joy, the triumph all at the same time. That's the recipe for ecstasy. Suffering plus joy.
I never thought about it that way, but I do welcome suffering simply because I know that it is allowing me to have a better understanding of myself. And that ultimately, at the end of the day is not that I don't know that I'm perfection, but that what more needs to come up so that I can exist in that perfection, if that makes sense.
A lot of sense. It ties into this thing I'm obsessed with right now. No matter all of the breath work, the plant medicine, the seminars, the 900 books I read since the military, nothing changes the ineffable Brian inside of the sculpture. Nothing will ever change that.
Yep, it's true. But that's because, well, I mean, you fundamentally know that because you gave yourself permission to explore that. And that's an interesting thing. I think that you and I can take each other to task around the books we've read and the work that we've done. But fundamentally, it doesn't mean anything, because really all of that, what I would hope, would lead us to, as some people would say, and I want to say it was Kabir who would say, I welcome the guest within me, right? And sometimes it feels like a guest because of all of this conditioning and the human experience. It feels foreign, but the guest is actually the perfection that exists within us. And the work we have done for ourselves and now hold space for other people to do, is allowed us to experience that guest in a real visceral, knowing way that I don't think either you or I could ever put into language, because it's indescribable. The human words don't encapsulate it.
I have this quote, and this ties into another idea. The Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao.
Yep.
A wisdom so profound it can't be uttered, right? And so what I'm experimenting with is all of these books are very important, and I'm glad I have them, because occasionally there's a quote that sparks a new idea. And as I was saying in our practice one, the wise be submissive to your husband is not a marriage metaphor. It's about the conscious mind directing the actions of all of the subconscious mind. 60 bits a second here, 60,000 here. And the books, the breath, the energy, all really important to get to a new epiphany, a new experience, a new peak experience. And so what I'm learning is that the key to all of it is, how do I take that and program it in my subconscious so that's running for me when I'm not looking at it? That was my King Arthur's sword in the stone moment that I had on Saturday. And if, as you listen to this, if you're going through like a major life change and you feel that pressure, I felt the pressure tremendously on Saturday. And I learned that that's hydraulic fluid. It's just a black substance that pushes me into the unknown. And in the unknown, I discovered this quantum subconscious reprogramming tool that I can tack on to the breath and the energy and the imagination stuff. And holy shit. So just naming that the uncertainty and the pressure creates epiphanies. That's what I found.
Yeah, but again, I'll go back to the fact that you give yourself permission to experience that. And I can't speak for you, but I'm curious what your experience is. I think a lot of people feel that pressure because we both know, right? Infinity. Until we learn the lesson, guess what? We're going to dance that lesson and dance that lesson.
Louder and louder.
Pressure, yeah, and the pressure. But most people, to your point, and I was much like you, we look at that from a place of being victimized, and we never give ourselves permission to.
Oh man, I gotta talk about this.
Do it.
Oh God, I feel nauseous. So here we go. No mask, no armor for your audience. Thank you. And I realized for a long time I had this special boy, special victim story. And I didn't realize why, like, I couldn't let go of this, to realize, like, feeling punished for doing the right thing. Persecuted, actually. And I let it take away a lot from me. I didn't have that realization until today. And so can you, I totally get what you're saying, because I get it. I've got a few more lines here. Special boy, special. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. Just let me go back to the victim part.
Yep.
So special. I have become an expert in breath and energy and imagination. I have the ability to show other people their gifts, their spiritual gifts, the gifts below the gifts that you had when you were 5. And if you ever want to know what those are, like, I'm like a mirror, and I use those gifts to help you remember. Like, that's how it works. And so I heard this the other day, and I was upset by it, uncomfortable. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood,
Up wood, carry
carry
water.
water. And so I thought I was special. I'm a special boy. No, I'm an ordinary man. I have the same access to consciousness that you do. I'm not special. I just have decided to go all in on it, to full ass this, in the words of Matthew McConaughey. So that's the special boy. The special victim story, like, no one's gone through this. You know, that's true. Nobody has. You know, in the way that it has gone down, and I just wanted to be recognized for my heart hurt. I had a friend of mine. He lost his eyesight working with the SEAL teams. You know, I remember being in the office with him, and like we weren't getting another platoon. He wasn't going to get promoted. And, you know, now he's a sponsored athlete from Delta Airlines, and he won 2 gold medals at, you know, the Paralympics.
Yep.
You know, and Brad, if you ever hear this, man, I'm so proud of you, you know? And I remember when you looked at me and I looked at you and like, what are we going to do next? And I felt myself somewhat jealous. Like he lost his eyesight serving his country. He doesn't have to explain that. People just know. You can't see my heart. And I thought that used to matter. You know, I wanted you to see how hurt I was and how all in and persecuted. And now I realize like it's a fucking adventure. Like
Yep.
like that had to happen for me to uncover my spiritual warrior shaman
Yep.
gifts. And in the ancient times of shamans, part of the shaman training was peeling the skin off the face and then burying the future shaman underground for 72 hours to experience something worse than death, to be prepared for whatever would come up. I got off easy.
You know, it's so funny. So there's so many things that come up for me, but we're so in the same fundamental knowing. And again, you can't put it into words, but I do believe, and I tell the people I work with 100% of the time when they're like, thank you so much for blah, blah. I'm like, I didn't do anything but offered a mirror to you to examine what already has always existed within you. It's just covered. I think of Pema Chodron's book, Polishing the Mirror, right? It's you and I are no different than anybody else. We just simply continue to show up. And when that shit hits the fan, when we are in the uncomfortable, when we're in the we're willing to go through it to polish our mirror just a little bit more. And in doing so, it gives us the ability to bear witness to and hold space for others to do that work for themselves.
I hear that. And as I listen to you say that, I'm triggered slightly, Carrie, in that. And I want to make sure, like for me, this, like I need to say this out loud for myself.
Please.
That when I lead my invincibility dojo, I just happen to be on the helm. And people trust me to like, hey, let's try this out. But I am no better than any person. My amount of time and the number of failures that I have in this particular cockpit is more than most. And I guess by the number of failures, expert. But like, I don't want to use the word expert to denote that I'm done learning. Like, I love working with someone that's never done this before. You teach me things that I've forgotten, things that I couldn't see. I couldn't see the nuances, and I don't remember the beginning. And I just see the full circle of all of this. Like, there's not a hierarchy to this spiritual ascension, you know? It's perfect. And we're pure.
I'm curious, what triggers you about that, though? Is it just a knowing or
No, the perception of like, I'm further along on this journey than any other person.
I love that.
I want to be really clear that that's not the case. And that wherever you are hearing this, you are welcome. As I open up and welcome the parts of me that I haven't fully integrated yet, the parts that I'm like, man, I'm the slow kid, you know?
That's beautiful. I mean, I feel very much like you. with the Monday networking mastermind, whatever you want to call it. I don't even think you can actually label it. I don't love labels anyway, but we just show up in a space and the conversation flows and we all benefit from each other's ability to speak what comes up for them in that moment without filter. And I think that's the gift we give each other. And that to me is fundamentally why I believe that it's my understanding is it's critical that I show up as my unique, quirky, individualistic Kerry self, because in doing that, I'm able to share what comes up for me that will imprint on you, and you do the same and you imprint on me. And it's a gift, it's a mutually beneficial gift. It's not one-sided. I will say though, when I hear you say that about taking the helm and stuff, I think about Thomas Merton and his book, Seeds of Contemplation. And I will tell you what I loved about what he said in it, because this is where I've straddled a lot too. There are many people who would fundamentally look at me and think that I come from a lot of pride. I do in the respect that I know that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, offering exactly what I'm meant to offer in that moment. In that, I'm in perfection. It does not mean I think I'm better than Brian or Gail or Joe Schmo who's homeless on the street. It does mean, though, that I recognize that we're equal and that what comes through me is perfection and is a gift, if that makes sense. And so I totally get what you're saying, but I also think, and interestingly enough, oh my God, this gets dicey. We're coming full circle moment right now, because Brian and I, the first time we met, it came about because of this kind of perspective. I heard him present something and I'm like, man, I hope he just says, this is what I created. And I know that I created it, and I'm like, dude, just say it, right? But that can be taken as, oh wow, you're really an ego, and I think it's a line I have to constantly watch, right? I'm never gonna say I like you. Have to straddle that and really ask myself, am I coming from ego or am I coming from spirit, source, whatever? But in doing that, we give such a beautiful gift.
There's something really special in coming from ego. Like I wrote a book, and maybe you've contemplated death similarly to how I have. I haven't just contemplated, I've experienced it twice. And the book was really powerful because it meant that there were two footprints left in the sand when I'm gone, and when I'm no longer here. Right? So like that was from ego. Like I want to contribute to the world. Like Brian Muka contributed to the world. Like that's such a beautiful expression of ego, you know? And
Yeah. And here's the thing, you knew you had something came from you in perfection to offer the world. And yet just because you offered something from that perfection to the world doesn't place you above anybody else. And I think that is the line that I know I respect you and I straddle. And I think I think that's what allows us or affords us the opportunity to hold space for other people, because we recognize that we are no better than them, that we're here to be a mirror and not to be a guru of some sort, which is where I really struggle sometimes.
I struggled with a long time. I spent a lot of money on gurus.
Oh yeah, me too. What?
Thinking that they could help me unleash my inner guru. And that's not how that works either for me.
Yep.
It's, I paid all this money as like a initiation, it seems like, to know that like the answers that I sought weren't out there, or they're not here either. They're like somewhere between here, and then like the edge of the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay.
And I just want to share two things that help me keep the ego in check. First, anytime I talk to somebody, it's like I'm talking to their little 5-year-old self. So like, there's never been a time that I've talked to a 5-year-old that I'm like, wow, that finger painting is amazing. It's awesome. It's really cool, so it helps with that. And then the other thing I need to remember, I was doing this really complicated piece of sacred geometry. It was Metatron's cube, and I was spinning the arcs of ascension through it, because Metatron's cube is great. It keeps us from sinking any lower in consciousness, but there's a lid. So the ejection orbit was something I was drawing. It was so complex that I was merely holding the pencil. Like I was being drawn by source. And I just get to remember that anything awesome that I've ever done is directly from source. And all of us have access to source. NFL players doing, awesome plays, the most beautiful song you've ever heard. It's all the same author.
Hands down, 100%. I think that's why.
And what I think is interesting in this is like, we all have, this is what I know. I am certain that there are many gifts in the same spirit. And, I have the gift of imagination, illumination. Carrie, you have different gifts with, the ability to shake shit up and organize people and things flow to you. And, you're here to be a disruptor, and me too, in a different way. And, well, what I'm saying is every single human on earth has prepared a long time to be here now.
Yep.
And each one of us has a particular part of the puzzle, world class. Each human has world class abilities, and like, wouldn't it be amazing to release those?
Yeah. Yep. But it starts with giving permission. And I think the other thing is creating a safe space to do that, which is what you do, I think, in the way you show up and serve people, as well as you may offer them tools and guidelines, because like you, I fundamentally stumbled across things that helped me get to where I am, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your client is going to benefit from the exact thing that Brian did. It's that you give them permission and hold space for them to examine it for themselves and to try new things.
Try new things. Yeah, it's like rock climbing.
Yep.
If I know I've got somebody at the other end of the rope, there's a lot of cool things I can do.
Yep.
And there's something really powerful that Larry and I are doing in studying the gene keys. So like, it's like human design, but like, I don't know, resonates for me. Especially the core wound. The core wound sits under the vocation. Like, what did I come here on earth to do? So my vocation, underneath of it, is my cosmic wound. And I have this cosmic wound of abandonment. This is what I've experienced. I feel abandoned being on earth now. I miss my family, my celestial family. And earth doesn't make sense to me a lot, And so there's treasure. There's treasure in that for me.
Yeah.
And it takes being able to work with somebody like Larry to be witnessed. I don't need you to do the work. I just want to be seen doing this, because it sucks. It's hard. It's courageous. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Is to be with that wound,
I love that you say that. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent, and you may say I'm in judgment, and I am. I'm gonna own it, but I hear a lot of people in the energy space right now talk about gesting in higher vibrations. Let's get to vibration 550 megahertz, which is unconditional love and stuff, but they're bypassing, uncovering like the wound to sustain that energy.
Yeah. I was like, well, what if I can just raise my vibration? I know how to do that.
Yeah.
And just stay there. Well, what happens when I'm asleep and I'm not actively raising my vibration? Like, the wound is still there. I can fly over it sometimes. But if I'm not actually going into that dark well,
yep,
there's also treasure in there too. So, in this work, I can go in and help somebody remove it, like permanent, gone forever.
But you help them examine it to let it go forever. And I think that's where I struggle sometimes, because I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I'm like, well, I created this tool that helps you to hear, and then you never basically suffer again. And I'm like, I just maybe it's just me, but my fundamental knowing is a byproduct of going through the wound.
Yeah, I agree. That's been my experience too. I love The Princess Bride. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, everybody talks about it.
Oh,
I've
it's so
not.
good. I have chills. There's a scene when the five-fingered man, he says, life is pain, Highness. And anybody that tells you otherwise is selling something.
Oh my God, I got to do something with that, because you're right. And yesterday during the networking group, I was talking to somebody about the fact that my good friend went and got a Brazilian butt lift. I am training at the gym but a couple times a week to grow my glutes. We ultimately will end up with the same result, right? She's going to have a bubble butt. I'm going to have a bubble butt. My experience, who I become in the process of building the bubble butt, is the gift. It's not necessary. Yeah, I will have achieved the result that I had originally intended to get, but that wasn't ever the gift in the first place. And I think we, as people who naturally, because of our brain and conditioning and primal state, we look for the quickest way to achieve the result, but the quickest way is a disservice to us knowing ourselves.
Agreed. And as you're sharing this is very relevant to your bubble butt thing. So when I was like 5 years old, cutest kid ever. Not ever. I was a really cute kid. Lean, happy. And then I went to Catholic school. And 2 years later, I weighed like 110 pounds at 7. Husky is the term. And I'd see my grandma, and she'd like poke my fat when I was little. And I'm telling you this because I did a hypnosurgery the other day. And I was asked, what's in the treasure chest? And it was my 5-year-old self. I wept. I'm the treasure that I've been seeking this whole time. And my grandma shows up. I was like, Grandma, what are you doing here? She goes, I need to explain some things to you. You want to know why I always gave you crap for being heavy? Yeah. She goes, I knew that would get you to exercise and understand nutrition. And you know the body and biohacking, physical therapy really, really well. That was all the fringe benefit of you wanting to be lean your whole life. Second thing, if you learn how to love yourself right now as is, I promise you the body weight will just melt away. Can you love you as you are? And I wanted to make it hard for you to like really, really, really know that you deserve to be loved.
You are so spot on. I work with clients all the time.
Third thing, one more thing. Louisa, my hypnotherapist, she said, what did that teach you about women? I said, I'm worthy of love only when I'm perfect. It's not true.
It's so true. Yeah, I 100%. And it is so interesting how many people can't love themselves based on the size of their body. And you and I have similar stories.
Size
I
of
won't
body,
get into
size of body, size of the bank account. Who are you sleeping
oh
with?
my God,
Like, what are the outside valuations?
I became addicted to climb the corporate ladder because I truly believed that was fundamentally going to make me worthy of being seen, loved, nurtured. Crazy. But with the few minutes that we have, obviously I'm going to leave in the show notes how any of you guys can reach out and get a hold of Brian to learn more about you have the dojo, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, share with them some of the things that you are part of that can be shared with people who are interested in meeting you or working with you.
Yeah. So the easiest thing to do is to come to the Invincibility Dojo. That happens at 9 o'clock a.m. every morning, Eastern Standard. And also it happens again at 3 o'clock. And I realize that when I do my morning practice for myself, morning practice with a group, and then afternoon practice, it's like a Tesla. Like I'm being able to recharge and then clearing the subconscious stuff. So that happens 5 days a week, every week. That's the easiest way to like come and take a taste. And then if you're an entrepreneur and you're growing to ascension through building your business, we have a whole campus exactly for that, for you to find your unique prosperity code. And so I invite you to come check it out, see what we're about, see what you see.
Cool.
Yep.
And then I'm just, for clarity's sake, I know the answer, but you work with people individually as well, correct?
I do. And so if you, for some reason you don't like the group approach, we can set up a time and meet each other, and love to see if I can be of service to you.
Sweet. I love it. All right. Last question. What is wisdom or a knowing that you have come to understand that you can impress upon the community right now that they can implement in their lives right now to start to experience either more self-love or freedom from fear or whatever? What's something you want to leave the audience with?
What I want to imprint with you right now, I can't express in words. So I'm just going to give you a sound hug and just see if you can feel this. I don't want to tell you what to find, but rather use that energy for whatever you wish.
It has been a real honor and a privilege. We could do this all night long. I'm so truly honored. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to end recording, so don't jump. But for the community, thank you so very much for showing up and holding space for myself and Brian as we allowed ourselves to hopefully be a conduit of, if nothing else, love and permission for you to get curious about where you can give yourself more permission and where you could potentially need support to get to a place where you fundamentally know that you are perfection. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.